Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. We're standing here with the E60 M5, and I know a lot of you guys have actually been asking me, do I do my own maintenance on this car? If I do, can I show you how to do an oil service? Now I know there's some oil service videos online. There's a couple of them. I'm going to show you how I do it, and there's a few little tricks in here that I'm also going to show you that I know the other videos don't necessarily show. That being said, they're all great videos in their own right, but I'm going to show you how I do this. Now, firstly, before we even get started, you have to know there's certain tools and there's materials you're going to need. So firstly, I'm going to get you, as I go, I'm going to show you the tools that I use as I go. I'm going to explain them as I'm working with them. But for now, before you even get into the tools, I'm going to show you what I'm using. And a lot of guys have asked me, what am I using for oil? Well, this is the oil that I'm using. It's a 10W60. This is actually a Shell product. It's the BMW M twin power turbo. This is actually what the dealer sells me. This is what I've been using lately in my car. And so it's a deviation because originally BMW was using the Castrol 1060 and they have since switched to the Shell product, which is what I'm going to use today. Now the car holds 9.3 liters of oil. And so you basically want to buy at least 10 liters. It's good to have a little extra. The other thing is the kit. So this is the filter kit. It comes with the O-rings, the crush gaskets, and I'm going to show you all this as we go. So let's get started. This is the key. Now what you got to know too is everybody has different ways of getting underneath the car. I know one video they say use that center jack point. I can't get my jack under that far. My car sits too low. My jack doesn't go in deep enough. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to use a jack on either side. I have two decent floor jacks. They're just not really large. So I'm going to hit it from both sides, jack the car up, and I'm going to get a jack in the middle jack point there underneath the car, and then we're going to work it that way. So watch, let's get started. Okay, so you'll notice there's one of these jack points. This is approximately 18 inches back from the front wheel. I'm going to place my one jack stand under here, and I'm going to jack that up. Okay, so now we're on the passenger side. I'm going to use a jack on this side too. I'm going to jack both sides relatively back and forth till I get the height that I want. Fortunately, I have two of these floor jacks. I'm going to go back and forth a few times. With the car in the air, so I've got this jack here. And the way I've got it, you can never be too safe. I've got another jack under here, underneath that little bit of a chassis there. But I actually have that jack in the middle. This here is the jack that is supporting up the majority of the car, of course. Between this and the two floor jacks, we've got lots of safety here. So make sure, above all else, safety is the first thing that you consider. You don't need a car falling on you while you're working underneath there. So then you'll look, this jack point right here, if you go about 12, 13 inches straight back, you have this drain plug here. And that there is actually the engine drain plug. This bolt, this is the drain bolt. And so I've got a 6mm Allen key head on a fairly long extension here. And that's just going to allow me to get in there. And I'm going to crack that loose and start draining the oil. So I've cracked it loose. And we're just going to turn this out. And it's going to start draining here in a second. It's coming out fairly easily. And there it comes. Oil pouring out. Make sure you've got at least 10 liters capacity in your little drain pan here like this. Otherwise, you're going to have a big mess on your hands. So we're just going to let that drain for a little while, and we're going to go up to the top of the engine and open the filler cap to allow it to drain a little faster. Okay, so while it's draining at the bottom, we're going to lift the hood. Make sure you undo your filler cap. That's going to allow things to drain a little better. So we're just going to make sure that that just airs out. Don't want to throw this around. We don't want a lot of dirt in here, and be careful with that seal. You don't want to ruin that seal. You want to make sure you have a good seal and vacuum there. So let's just put that right there for now, and it's going to drain out, of course. Next thing is, you'll notice there's no filter up here. Most engines have a filter up top somewhere for the oil filter. Unfortunately, in this car, we have to go down below. It's actually right tucked in below, straight below the headlights on the passenger side. So let's get going on that. So it actually resides under this area. Now, what's a little disappointing to me is we have one bolt and it's right here. Now, this isn't normal. Now, you got to remember, I've always taken my car to the dealer for servicing. So why is it that they put this thing back like this, missing all these bolts and hardware? See, that's another example of why it never hurts to do stuff yourself sometimes. You can recognize these problems and sometimes fix some of this. So this is what I'm finding. Anyway, there's a bunch of bolts that you'd have to undo here. Of course, for me in this case, I only have one bolt to undo, and that's right in here. And so I'm going to use the 8mm right here. This is going to take off this little bolt here, the one that I have holding on this panel. So I'm going to unscrew that. Sorry guys, there's actually two here. So there's these two on the vertical side that are in place. So I'm going to undo them both. And I'll show you in a second what they look like. So this is what you've got on the vertical. They look like this. They got that little head. Again, this is an 8mm. It's got a big washer because it's backing a plastic housing. You don't want to shatter it and crack it. And then they use this sort of coarse thread here. So this is what you've got. And then I'm going to take this piece out. This obviously tucks in, slides up, and slides down. There we go. And that's it. Now we have access to the oil filter. You can see right here. That's the same 6mm Allen key that we used to do the drain or undo the drain, oil drain underneath the car. It's the same size. So 6mm, we're going to undo that first. That's going to allow this thing to drain out the canister so we get rid of most of the oil. And then we're going to take this housing off after that. So now we're going to grab the filter. So before we drain the filter housing, I want to get the plug back in the bottom of the engine, because move over to the other side so we can use the drain pan to drain the rest of the filter housing out. So I'm going to take the plug. You see the old crush washer? We're going to get rid of the old one. And then we go into the new kit. This, of course, you see has two sides. It's got the lettering that goes up into the housing. So that goes into the housing, and this sticks out the bottom. So that's how that orientates. Now, we've got this little package of goodies, so let's cut that open. There's one crush washer, and so what we're going to do with that, we're going to use a brand new crush washer. We're going to put it back on here. This thing looks fairly clean. I mean, you can clean the threads. You know, you can chase that. There we go. Give that a little bit of a wipe. See, clean it up, get rid of the thread, any kind of debris that you might have in the threads. And so we have the new bolt with, or the old bolt with the new crush washer. We're going to bolt that in now. So I'm going to give a little wipe around the hole. Get rid of any residual oil that's kind of lurking. Before I put this drain bolt back in, clean that up. Okay, that's clean. Now, you'll notice it has the new crush washer in it and the plug. And I'm going to try to spin that in by hand. And then I'm going to put a ratchet on this. Now, for those guys that are a little bit extra, anal about this, I like just doing a nice, good, snug feel to it, because it is a crush washer after all. But at the end of the day, If you really want, you can apply about 18 pound-feet of torque to this with a torque wrench. Don't want to go too tight, but you also don't want it coming apart either. So I'm going to pull that out now, and that's it. And so there's the finished product. So we've got the bolt in there. I wiped around there a little bit. It's still a little moist, but I wiped it so we don't have a lot of junk left. Of course, your bolt with the new crush washer is in there, and you're good to go. Okay, so now we're going to drag this drain pan over to here so we can capture what's in the oil filter housing. Make sure we don't lose any on the ground here. First thing is we're going to use the same 6mm Allen key, 6mm that we used on the drain plug for the engine. We're going to use that here now. So let's pull this plug out. Okay, so we got this cracked. Let's just undo that. That's the little plug for the filter housing. Let's get that draining out here first. Not a ton of oil there, but there's certainly some. Okay, so we have this is the drain plug from the filter housing. So this is a little O-ring on there. As you can see, these are the parts from that new kit. Extra crush washer here, which evidently has no place. It's a spare, and everybody seems to have the same dilemma. So that's okay, we'll put that to the side. We have a brand new O-ring, which I'll show you in a minute. You want to make sure that's highly lubed because you don't want this binding as you're tightening up the housing for the filter. It'll end up tearing this and then you'll have a leak. As well, here's the new O-ring for this. So here's the old one. Let's pick that off. Let's get that off of there. Peel that off like that. Put that to the side. That's garbage. You never want to reuse an O-ring, that's for sure. And so what we'll do is the same thing what we did the other one. We'll just we'll clean out the grooves here. Make sure that's all nice and clean. And then we'll chase these threads here as well. Okay, so just give this a quick wipe here with the clean towel here. This is a cloth. So we chase the threads. Now what we're going to do before we get going too far, we want to make sure that any O-ring that we put on is going to have new oil on it. So here we go. We're going to use some of this. Give it a little shake. Crack one of these open. And then what I'm going to do, take a little bit of this oil here. I always like to shake a little off the cap and clean this O-ring with some new oil. Make sure it's greasy on the inside and the outside. So everything slides in there nice and good. And then what we'll do is we'll just slide this on here. Doesn't really matter exactly how you do that. And it just wants to fit back in that groove. So we got that ready to rock and roll. Now is next we're going to pull the filter housing and then we're going to give that a refurb, put the new filter in, the old filter out and all that. So anyway, before we undo this, we're just going to give this a bit of a wipe. It sounds like it's pretty much done draining out. So now we're going to spin the housing out. It's going to probably drip a little bit of oil yet, but we've got most of that oil out of there now. So 24 millimeter should get this housing off. And I've got that on a long extension here, so it's not too difficult to work with in there, breaking knuckles and such. Now we can spin this off by hand. And there's going to be a little bit of drippage, I'm sure, but we'll get what we can out of this. So the filter stayed in there. Unfortunately, it didn't come with the actual housing, but let's just give this all a good cleanup now. Okay, so we're going to chase the threads. This time we're just going to do it by hand. Use a nice clean rag, shop towel, lint-free if you've got, preferably, but you just want to clean that out real nicely. Okay, so there's this O-ring in here. Let's get that picked out of there. There's our little rubber O-ring. We want to make sure we get that cleaned out. Right there. Get that peeled out of there. Set that down, and of course we want to make sure we got a new O-ring in there, but we're going to clean that groove out real nice. Okay, so we want to make sure we lubricate this with some fresh oil, some brand new Shell oil. Let's get that going. Get that up, greased up really nice. And then we can put that onto the housing. We want to make sure we find it in that groove. There's a groove in there. Let's get it in that groove. And so just work it around. Hold it on that end, work it around. And it's nice and uniform. So we know that we've got a good seal there now. It's greased up and it's continuous all the way around with no little tweaks or rolls or bends. Okay, so now since I've got it in my hand, I figure I might as well just do this. I've got the new O-ring in there, O-ring here. Might as well just thread this in here right now, and we'll do it while we've got it on the bench. And then we can tighten it up a little more once it's underneath. Now this one here, of course, is a little less torque. So the overall, you torque this whole housing up to, with that 24 mil, you torque this using this extension, you torque this up to 18 foot-pounds as well, as the same as the bolt underneath the engine. And this one here is only going to be about 8 foot-pounds of torque into the canister here. So this little guy is only going to be about 8 pounds. So that's already snugged in there like that. And I'll snug it a little more once it's in, but that's basically all it is. So now we take the filter, and this just gets pushed right in. Letter side into the canister. There you go. Okay, so now we got this locked in there. Letter side in. And now I've got this in, this in. We can tighten this up a little more. But again, we're going to pull the old filter out of there first, and then we're going to reinsert the new stuff. Let's go. So I'm going to pull the filter, but I'm going to use this box, the old box, and I'm going to put it in a bag right away because that's going to make a mess if I don't do that. So let's reuse the box, button that up. Put that into a bag so it doesn't leak all over the place. And we'll deal with that later. Now I'm going to give this a quick little wipe. And you can see inside there it's fairly clean. But now I'm going to thread this new filter into the housing. Spin that in there. And then I'm going to give this one more little snug here. Snug. Good. Don't need too much in there. That doesn't need to be too tight. So everything's sealed back up other than the cover, of course, here. We're going to start adding some oil now. Okay, so next we're going to just pull that cap off. Let's just leave that neatly off to the side. Put a funnel. We don't want to have a lot of mess around here, of course. Drop a funnel in there. And we're going to start pouring oil in. Okay, so you noticed I put 9 liters of oil. This engine holds actually 9.3. I hope we're not over. I'm pretty sure we're going to be under anyway, but I've got 9 liters in there that I just poured. I've got the cap I put back on. I confirm that I did the plugs back up on both the filter as well as the engine. Now I'm going to go for a start. We have to let the car run for a few minutes before we can check. And actually, how you check the level is not going to work after 1 or 2 minutes. It's an electronic dipstick. There's no manual dipstick on here. So you technically have to drive at least like 10 kilometers or 10 miles. And the car has to be completely warmed up for it to give you an accurate number on measurement or on the reading for the actual level for your oil. But we're going to get it started up, make sure we got good pressure and everything else is running. Let's go. Okay, so let's start up. Foot on the brake. Still shows 0.6 on the actual oil scale, but that was from before, so it needs a reset. So we're going to do a reset on that. So I did a reset. I toggled the BC button until I came to the oil and I held it down, and now it shows it's thinking, so it's got the hash mark, so it's not really giving me a readout yet. It's not ready for that yet. The main thing I want to do is warm it up, and I want to make sure I have no leaks underneath. Then I'll put the cover back on over the filter, and then we'll go for a drive, make sure everything's running well, and then we'll do another level recheck on this. So as you can tell, it's still not done calculating the level yet. You'll notice it's trying to check now. The timer's running, so it's just waiting to measure the oil. And now look, it's at 0.6 liters. It just finished up. I had to toggle the BC button until I kept hitting this. That toggles you through, and then you press and hold BC, and then this goes into kind of a thinking mode. It took a while. It was hashes, and then it actually went to a little timer, and now it finished off at 0.6 because it doesn't work right away. Number one, the car has to be running, but number two, the car actually has to be warmed up, and you have to put miles on it, at least 10 miles, as well as the car being fully heated before this even tries to calculate your level. It needs to know that the oil is up to temperature. So now that the car is up to temp, I took it for a short drive, and I had put 9 liters. I knew I was close. So now I find I'm at 0.6. I can leave it here, that's not a problem. Even down to about 0.2, 0.3, I could drive it. For now, I'm gonna leave it. That should be fine. Now, to actually do the reset, the service reset is another story. So with the ignition on, you're gonna press and hold. Press and hold. You toggle through. As you can see, you keep toggling. Everything else is fine, but what we have, if you look at the oil, it says 3,800 kilometers, so I'm going to press and hold it. I let it go, press and hold it, reset, let go, press it again, and it zeroes it out. So now it's a full restart at 24,000 kilometers. It's got till the next oil change. Of course, we're not going to wait that long. That's ridiculous. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for watching this great video. I hope this E60 M5 oil service helps you a lot. If you ever consider doing your own work, this is a great place to start. Don't forget, this also works for the E63 M6 of the same generations, as it also uses the S85 V10 motor. So, like I said, if you, in a summary, there's some tricks that you want to follow in this video. I also share with you some of the little tips as far as resetting and the service lights and everything. So, I hope you enjoyed it. You make sure you give me a like, thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'd love to hear any comments. If you have any feedback you'd like to offer, love to hear from you guys. So thanks again for coming. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.